Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. In 1991, Cincinnati voters adopted term limits for council members. Any member elected to 4 successive 2-year terms, 8 years in a row, must relinquish their seat and not stand for office for 2 election cycles. As a result, 4 council members elected in November 1997, Qualls, Stern, Tillery, and Yates, faced the term limit boundary at the end of the current term, next December 1st. Knowing that incumbency and name recognition is all important in a field race like that for council, the impact of term limits is quickly becoming clear. On July 1st, after 25 years of service, Bobby Stern stepped down and passed her seat to fellow Charterite Jim Tarbell. Then last Sunday afternoon, after weeks of increasing speculation, former Mayor Dwight Tillery called a press conference in the Bond Hill Recreation Center to announce that he too would step down. Here is his formal statement in full.
Today my resignation from Cincinnati City Council effective November the 30th, 1998. After much deliberation, I believe now is the time to move on. Along with working at my law firm, Wade, Schneider, Bayless, and Chesley, I am considering some new opportunities that have been of interest to me for several years. I am deeply grateful to the citizens of this community for the opportunity to serve in this office. Cincinnati is indeed a great city, and its citizens are the best in the world. But just as my former colleague Bobby Stern left council without any fanfare, I have chosen to do the same. It is just simply time to move on and give someone else an opportunity. I have given to Vice Mayor Cooper my official letter of resignation, which names Paul Booth as my successor designee. I believe Mr. Booth will do an excellent job, and this opportunity will give him a chance to get started in serving the people of this city.
Mr. Tillery has been out of town since the press conference and was unavailable for Newsmakers this morning. But Paul Booth, Cincinnati's newest council member, who will officially be sworn in this Wednesday or maybe in 2 weeks, is my guest this morning. Mr. Booth is the president of Seven Hills Management, a real estate company that manages low and moderate income housing. He is also the president, or chairman of the board of the Citizens Committee on Youth, CCY. Paul, welcome to Newsmakers.
Good morning, Dan. Good to be with you.
Well, you know, you've done this before. Back in 1989, you were appointed to council. You stood for election, but didn't make it.
Right.
But ever since then, almost every election year, every 2 years, your name has popped up. Maybe Paul Booth's going to run. Maybe Paul Booth's going to run. And you haven't. Why now? Why did you decide to get back in?
Well, this is an opportunity that came up that I did not seek. Mr. Tillery had a short list of names that he was considering, and I was not at the top of that list. But public service is something that has been a part of me for a long time. I've continued in the interim since I was on council in '89 to be very active in the community in various capacities. As you know, I chair the board of the Citizens Committee on Youth. So it's just something that's really inbred in me. So when the opportunity came up, my family and I decided we would go with it.
Well, you know, when you say there was a short list, and of course, at City Hall, people have been talking about Dwight's decision for certainly weeks, really months. Knew it was coming, not necessarily when. Had you been in discussion with him? Did you know, in that press conference, he mentioned that he had called you the day before, on Saturday.
That's exactly what happened.
But was that just the final step? Did you know something was going on?
No, I knew something was going on, but actually as late as Friday, I was told that it was a done deal with someone else. And somehow in the ensuing period between Friday and Saturday, the ball was tossed back to me.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I thought maybe indicated that this did happen pretty quick is, very practically, you don't live in the city of Cincinnati anymore. You live in Amberley Village.
That's correct.
What are you going to do?
Almost 1 year to the day, a year ago to the day that Mr. Tillery approached me, my family and I had moved because of space to the Amberley Village area. Although most of our lives, our work, family, and everything else we do is concentrated in the city of Cincinnati. So we've got some decisions to make. We've got to make our primary residence in the city of Cincinnati, and we plan to do that.
Very practically, I mean, it's been referred to in the news as the residency requirement, but that makes it sound like somebody who's being hired. You know, the city manager or the chief of police has a residency requirement to move into the city.
That's correct.
But city council is a little bit different. This is more than just a residency requirement. How are you going to handle this before you get sworn in? Can, in fact, legally you be sworn in before you have an address inside the city?
We have to physically locate ourselves, have an address, and become Cincinnati voters by the time I'm sworn in.
Okay. This is, in fact, being taped midweek. What is this, Wednesday? This will be shown on Sunday. Do you have that address yet?
Just about. By the time within a few hours, we plan to have that. We've got to go out and look and secure something, and so yes. I mean, the statute requires that. We're going to do it. We're going to be in compliance. And
okay. Last time you were on council, you served as a Republican. You replaced Ken Blackwell, who had started out as a Charterite, became a Republican. Nationally, he was a Democrat.
Right. There's a lot of that going on these days.
Yeah. Last time you were a Republican. I guess I've always associated you, in my mind, as a Republican. Now you're being appointed by Dwight Tillery, who's a Democrat, being named by Minette Cooper, who's a Democrat. And at the press announcement, you know, some discussion about the Democratic Party. Where does party stand in your mind in city politics?
Well, party, just like the labels, liberal, conservative, moderate. I mean, what's really in a name? I think that the voting public has shown us that they really want us to place people interests above party and above politics. Let me just go back and let's talk about how that happened. I've always been a registered Democrat, lifelong. But in 1989, I had the opportunity to meet Lee Atwater. I serve on the Board of Advisors of the King Center, the Martin Luther King Jr. Center in Atlanta. And Mr. Atwater and I happened to be in a meeting together, and we started talking, we started chatting. He told me of his vision for the party, his concerns about diversity. And so I began to look at that. And then coincidentally, when I came back to Cincinnati, and this was during my tenure as president of the NAACP, the Republican Party approached me about filling Ken Blackwell's seat. Well, I was honored. I knew it was a very tough step to make that party change, but because of the inspiration that I got from Lee Atwater and because of my longing for public service even then at that time, I decided to go with it. I ran. Came in 11th, just behind Roxanne Qualls.
Did you change your registration?
No, you couldn't change. You can't change.
I know, not automatically, but you then start taking primary ballots. You change your registration.
Well, there was really no primary at that time, so there was not another primary that gave me an opportunity to change my registration.
Before the election.
Before or after the election.
Okay.
So I mean, I was appointed in May.
Right.
The election was in November. There was no primary following that, so I never really got the opportunity to officially change my registration.
So at this point, you're still a D?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So anyway, after the election, and I think I need to say this, there was the whole issue about money, and I was concerned about the lack of money that I received, and that's really not true. I mean, the Republican Party was extremely generous. I mean, I was a first-time candidate, new kid on the block, and council was really different at that time. All of the veterans were there, and I was really the new kid on the block, but they were very generous. But I found that my message was not really reaching effectively those voters within the Republican community who are solidly Republican voters. My message was not reaching them, and that was apparent in the election results. So it was really a matter of me changing my total philosophy or keeping it the same. Well, I kept it the same. I'm a person that's very straightforward. And so with that, I went back to the Democratic Party and have been very active since. I spent 2 years in David Mann's office. I ran 2 campaigns for Mark Longabout, who, as you know, ran for city council and Congress himself.
Okay, you just mentioned that the last time you did this, you got appointed incumbency, but it was in May, and then you had to run in November. Now you're getting appointed basically a full year out, almost 11 and a half months out.
That's correct.
So you have a little bit more time. But you mentioned that the last time you ran, there's always a money problem. And let's face it, since 1989, the amount of money it takes to run for a council has been ratcheted way up.
Oh.
You're now going to run as a Democrat, and there isn't a Democrat around here who's ever raised big dollars. What are you going to do this time?
Well, hopefully, I'm obviously a little bit older now, hopefully a little bit wiser, and I know the routine. I know my way around the block. I mean, fundraising was very new to me at that time, although through various organizations I was a part of, I had done a lot of fundraising, but never for myself. You're right. The whole landscape has changed. I believe in 1989, that was the first council race where someone broke the six-figure barrier, and they probably spent right at $99,000 or $100,000. Well, in this last campaign, I think one person may have spent $400,000.
And what's it going to take this time for you, who you've been around longer, but you haven't been in the middle of everything? A lot of people know you, but then again, voting is different, as you found out. What's it going to take to spend
I'm
this
told that it's going to take somewhere between 75 and maybe 125, 50,000, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Democrats are modest, aren't they?
It's going to be tough, and we have to be real. We have to be realistic too.
Okay. One of the things is getting elected. The other thing is once you serve on council. And you said you served before when some of the really experienced people, and it was a different council. People who have been on council recently have spoken a lot about the frustrations of being on council. And on Sunday, Dwight Tillery even responded to a question from a reporter. And I'd like to hear that now and then talk to you a little bit about that.
Okay, good.
I'm not leaving because it is frustrating. But it is frustrating. But that is not my reason for leaving. I think that in any job, and this is the kind of work that we do, there is a level of frustration. But certainly that isn't my reason for leaving. So I want to be clear on that. And I don't want to give the impression that there isn't a level of frustration. But I suspect there's a level of frustration for all council members.
Level of frustration for all council members. You've observed this council, as we all have. What do you think? I mean, people have called it dysfunctional. People have, as you go back into it, how do you think you can work in that environment?
Well, I think part of the problem is inherent in the system that we have. I mean, you are perpetually running for office. Part of that may be the way that we elect or select our mayor, because they're persons who go in, or who seemingly go in, running for mayor.
Because everybody's just a top vote getter.
That's correct.
Let me ask you a couple of quick things, because I'm aware of time. Would you favor, say, 4-year terms for council rather than 2-year terms?
I think 4-year terms are good. It really gives you a chance not only to hit the ground running, but to concentrate on the job that you're chosen to do, and that is to serve the people.
Would you support districts, or at least some districts, rather than all at large?
I think a combination is good. Not having really studied it thoroughly, but I would lean toward the district combination system.
What about direct election of mayor?
That's one that I'm still studying, but I think I lean toward that, because I think the system that we have now is not necessarily serving us the best.
And of course, right now there is a joint effort by the Democrats, the Republicans, and the NAACP to work out a new model proposal, and we'll see where that goes.
That's correct.
So you go into council thinking you would be one of the people who believes that structural change is a good idea.
I think it's really important, and I think it'll make a big difference.
But the council you'll go into won't have been structurally changed. Who do you imagine? Who do you see yourself lining up with? How do you see yourself fitting into this council?
Well, obviously, as a Democrat, I have to work with my Democratic colleagues on council.
Who don't always work together.
That's true. That's very true. But I'm sort of a consensus builder, and that can cut both ways. It can be good and bad. But the whole of council has to work together, and I will go in with that attitude. I will not go in seeking to try to be the top vote getter. I will go in seeking to try to get things done and do the best job that I can do serving the people. So much of it is really a matter of attitude and a matter of approach.
We're almost out of time, and I know this isn't fair, but you haven't had a lot of time either to think about this. What are going to be, and we've got like 45 seconds, what's going to be your top priorities?
My top priority will be neighborhood revitalization, providing opportunities for home ownerships, incentives for businesses to locate in our neighborhoods so that they can revitalize themselves.
Okay, so it's that neighborhood focus, which is always the push-pull when downtown comes in the riverfront.
That's
Paul, good luck.
Thank
and
you.
I am sure you'll be back on Newsmakers as this thing evolves and issues come up. So we'll be talking to you.
Great, thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Stay tuned. After the break, I will be joined by several people attempting to respond to violence in our community in a fresh, healing way. Just quick. Yeah. Hold on a second. Yes. Okay. Okay. When I walk out, yeah. Oh, he's up with you? Last Monday afternoon, a small group of people gathered for a prayer vigil at 14th and Main and over the Rhine. The weekend before, Clint Gardner, a 26-year-old man, died in a violent death at that corner. In a neighborhood plagued by violence, this simple prayer vigil may seem insignificant, but in fact, it signals the beginning of a new interfaith effort developed in Dayton, Ohio to create a violence-free America. Welcome back. Violence is a fact of modern urban life. Mainstream society has responded by passing laws with harsher and longer penalties. Younger and younger violent offenders have been moved into the adult court system. And over the last 2 decades, prisons and prison populations have exploded. In the last 15 years in Ohio alone, we have opened 23 new prisons and currently hold almost 45,000 men and women behind bars. Others, motivated out of an alternative religious vision, have initiated a new type of response, reflected in last week's prayer vigil. To explain this new initiative, I am joined by 2 people. Sister Alice Gerdeman, a member of the Roman Catholic Sisters of Divine Providence, is the coordinator of the Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center. Denise Crew is the shelter coordinator for the drop-in center in Over the Rhine at 12th and Elm. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Welcome.
You know, Alice, this action last Monday didn't seem to be that powerful or didn't have that many people. And if it was just a single event, probably maybe no big deal. But this is part of a bigger effort, right?
Right, it is. Actually, this was the 12th or 13th time that we have been in various places in Cincinnati doing approximately the same thing, standing at a place where violence has occurred and praying that the God of peace will be with the people of the neighborhood and will bring about healing and the power that healing brings in order to make their neighborhood a better place to live in.
So this is the 12th or 13th time you've
Yes.
done this here in Cincinnati. Is it just that I only caught up with it at this point, or has it just not gotten much attention?
Well, it hasn't got much attention, and primarily that's all right with us. It isn't necessarily a media event. If media covers it, that's of course fine. But where we spread the news is to the people in the neighborhood, the local churches, etc., and just say, why don't we come together to bring the power of our own prayer, of our own conviction about the need for peace in this neighborhood. So it's not really surprising that a lot of people don't know about it.
Denise, you work in Over the Rhine. You know a lot of people in the Over the Rhine. What does, and this is for, as Alice has said, this is for the people of that neighborhood when an event like this occurs in that neighborhood. What impact can something like this have?
The prayer vigil?
Yes.
For me, I can only speak for myself and those people who were with us on Monday. For myself, it was just a way of starting over, a new fresh start, publicly saying violence is wrong and we should do everything that we can to try to eliminate it. And if that involves having a prayer vigil on the street, talking to people who pass by, passing out literature, then that's what we need to do.
Alice, this isn't, you're talking about 12 or 13 times in Cincinnati, but in fact, as I understand it, this has also been used in Dayton, Ohio, and maybe other places. Is that correct?
Indianapolis has it also.
Okay.
Yeah, and at other places in the United States do the same thing.
And how long have people been doing this, and where does it come from? What's sort of the ground? What's sort of the foundation?
Well,
for
we
this?
in Cincinnati first began talking about it in '93, and I think we had the first public vigil in early spring of '94 when there was a drive-by shooting that killed a teenager in Norwood. And I think that was the first time we publicly were on the street. The motivation behind it and sort of the underlying belief is that good will prevail over evil. And that when something evil and violent has happened, good people need to come forth and let people know that there is hope, that there are people who care, that healing is possible, that there are alternatives to just anger and vengeance when we're trying to bring healing to a neighborhood. That obviously is very hurt. Not just the victim or the victim's family, but everybody's frightened. Kids are frightened, old people are frightened, parents are frightened. Everybody's affected when this happens.
You know, have you had others of your 12 or 13 have been in Over the Rhine?
Most of them have been in the Over the Rhine.
Okay.
We've had one in northern Kentucky. We've had them when people in a neighborhood call and say, this has happened in our neighborhood, would you please come? We go. Otherwise, we hope that neighborhood people will organize them, and we help them do that when possible.
Huh, that's interesting. So coming out of the neighborhood itself.
Yes.
Denise, do you hear people in Over the Rhine, do they notice these? Do in fact people talk about this as something, as a sign of solidarity and effort?
Definitely so. Definitely so. When I spoke with Sister Alice, and they were just there for us. They were just there. We didn't have to do anything. They really took the ball and rolled with it. And for those of us who were grieving a loss, all we had to do was just to let them take care of things, and we came to be a part of the prayer service, and it was very communicative. We were able just to be grieving people. It kind of made me feel empowered, freed me up from some of the fears that I had had.
How many people, I saw the images from the TV camera, how many people participate, and I don't know if there is a normal one of these, I mean maybe each one is different, but how many people participated last Monday afternoon, and how much people would you like to see participate?
Oh, geez.
Round numbers.
10, 15 maybe.
Something in that area.
Yeah.
Are there some people who come every time, no matter where this is?
There are a couple of us that do, but usually it's neighborhood people, and they range in small ones, like 10 or 15, to when a violent act was committed in the neighborhood where I lived in northern Kentucky, we had about 250. But it was a community that this sort of just clicked. This is what we have to do, and we actually had to move into a church because we couldn't hear people. We couldn't get them all on the street corner. There were too many. That's the largest we've ever had. We don't have a goal of so many people. We have a goal of being there for the people who need us. And if that's 2, that's fine. If it's 200, that's fine also.
In terms of the people who need you, need to see this, I mean, some of it's amorphous in the sense of just people in the neighborhood who need to be reassured. What about family? Do you try to invite family?
We like to invite family. I know for my children, it was very difficult to attend the services. It was even more difficult for me to ask them to stand on that street corner with me because they were friends of Clinton. And in their absence, I stood in their stead.
So they found it a little too much.
A little much.
Okay. And is that something that you have found with other people?
Yes, it is. Some people stand back in curiosity. Some people come up later and say thank you. Some people want to be there. Sometimes when it's a very young person, we've found that teenagers who are just coming by will just stand with us for a little while, and then they move off again. Obviously, they needed to do that, or they wouldn't have done it.
And for people who might be interested, we do have some information. If you're interested in this sort of activity or would like to call and see when an event takes place in your neighborhood, you can call the Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center at 579-8547. thank you very much for being here. You know, it's that single small action, as we learned so many times over history, that makes the difference, and I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next Sunday to hear the ideas and insights of the women and men who are shaping our community for the future. Have a good week.